The death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has caused an outcry in the West, as well as calls for further funding for Ukraine in their war against Russia. What, though, is the position of the West when it comes to outspoken critics of establishment policies, whether it's Gonzalo Lira or Julian Assange? Where's that conversation? Let's have it now. Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on our voyage to truth and freedom that we undertake together. Remember, if you can support our content, we make additional videos every week just for our community, as well as interviewing important journalists who will be critical of the establishment. And at a time like this, where there is ongoing complexity and the need for adult conversations about difficult issues, this is precisely the coverage and conversation that's required. It's odd that Alexei Navalny has died at this time, just after Putin has been interviewed by Tucker. It's extraordinary and it's sad. Let's have a look at Alexei Navalny, what his politics were. Let's have a look at how the death is being utilized by the establishment media. And let's have a look too to see if there's any hypocrisy in this coverage, given that Julian Assange is still in prison in Belmarsh without trial, essentially for being critical of the policies of the West, in particular with regard to military action abroad. Let's see if we can hold all of this in our heads simultaneously and assess whether or not this death, which still as yet may not be a murder. I mean, it's quite likely it is a murder. He's died in prison. Putin is the sort of person that would have people murdered. There's no question about that. But is it being utilized to legitimize further expenditure and funding of the Ukraine war? And is it hypocritical to declare that this is morally outrageous while Julian Assange is still in prison and Gonzalo Lira died in a Ukrainian jail?
Now, where outrage is growing following the death of Alexei Navalny, the staunch Putin critic who Russian authorities say died suddenly Friday in a Siberian prison.
The death of Alexei Navalny yesterday was a reminder of the extraordinary brutality of Putin and his government.
Whatever story they tell, let us be clear, Russia is responsible.
They've really leapt to that conclusion, and again, it's probably true. But for all of that piety and condemnation, do you see an absence of appropriate piety when it comes to the case of Julian Assange, who's still in Belmarsh prison right now, whose hearing is this week, which will not be covered by the Western media? To remind you, what Julian Assange did was reported on war crimes of the West, primarily in the Middle East. For this, he's been imprisoned in various forms for about 10 years now. What's interesting here is not whether or not Alexei Navalny was murdered by Putin. Let's assume he was. Let's say that Putin is definitely a war criminal, definitely a tyrant, definitely murders people in jail. Let's analyze the position from which the West is criticizing Russia and Putin. Is it one of moral clarity, purity, or is it from a position of hypocrisy?
We should be clear about what has happened here. Putin's Russia imprisoned him, trumped up charges against him.
Like, I guess what you could do is just imagine in your mind they were talking about Julian Assange, and then is there at any point a contradiction there? Trumped up charges against him, accusations appeared out of thin air. Essentially, the argument we're making is this: are our governments in a position to wage war, or a proxy war at least with Russia, on the basis of moral reasons when the conduct that they are condemning is so similar to their own conduct?
Sent him to a Arctic penal colony, and now he's tragically died. And we should hold Putin accountable for this, and no one should be in any doubt about the dreadful nature of Putin's regime in Russia.
That's what true morals and principles mean, that the values and principles can be applied to any situation. They're not used as a weapon. Aha! Right, this guy's dead. Brilliant. Remember, we hate Putin, don't we? And we can use this to amplify our narrative that we should perpetuate this profitable war. If they were real principles, they would be talking about Julian Assange and Gonzalo Lira in the same way. Oh yeah, should Julian Assange really be in Belmarsh? He hadn't had a trial or anything. Those would be the kind of conversations you'd hear David Cameron or Joe Biden publicly having. You won't, and there's a reason for that, isn't there?
You know, like millions of people around the world, I'm literally both not surprised and outraged by the news. Reported death of Alexei Navalny.
We all know that this is about utility. We all know that Joe Biden didn't have a genuine emotional reaction. What? Alexei Navalny's dead? Oh no, he was my favourite opponent of Russia's tyranny. Remember, the United States have definitely participated in the murder of political opponents, whether that's Saddam Hussein or Colonel Gaddafi. These people were just like publicly, almost evangelically murdered as a result of becoming enemies of American foreign interests, in addition to the crimes exposed by Julian Assange, whose plight is not so openly discussed. So if this is about moral, we should be not surprised because we knew how bad Putin was, but we should be outraged because we knew how bad Putin is. If that's your position, what is your position on Assange?
He bravely stood up to the corruption, the violence,
Like Assange.
all the bad things the Putin government was doing. In response, Putin had him poisoned, he had him arrested, he had him prosecuted for fabricated crimes.
Assange.
He sentenced him to prison. He was held in isolation.
Like, at what point could you not apply these words to Julian Assange? Like, because he's not Russian? Is that what it is?
Even all that didn't stop him from calling out Putin's lies. Even in prison, he was a powerful voice for the truth, which is kind of amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, it is amazing. How can you do that speech and not in the back of your mind go, oh no, we're going to have to do something about Julian Assange? Yeah, but we can't, can we? Because we're going to continue to wage convenient wars around the world for decades to come. And indeed, this is one of those wars. The war with Russia is one of those wars. This is not about whether or not Putin is a tyrant. Let's say he is. This is not about whether Putin murdered Navalny. Let's say he did. This is about, is the West in any position to make such a judgment? And is there utility in this death and the way it's being reported? I.e., is it being used to drum up further funding, more goodwill from the public to perpetuate this very expensive war?
And he could have lived safely in exile after the assassination attempt on him in 2020, which nearly killed him, I might add.
A bit like the CIA plot against Julian Assange? No, nothing like that. In what way? We weren't able to execute our plot. So you're saying that Russian secret services are more effective than American secret services? No!
Russian authorities are going to tell their own story. But make no mistake, Putin is responsible for Navalny's death. Putin is responsible.
We can't continue to bring you this potentially paradigm-shattering information without the support of our sponsors. We got one for you right now. Stay to the end, please. Is it me, or does the future feel more insecure and uncertain? Wars, pandemics, lies, trickery. For those of you that are in the United States, there is a way to secure your hard-earned nest egg. American Hartford Gold makes it easy to protect your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside a qualifying retirement account like your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is the highest rated firm in the United States with an A+ rating from the BBB, that's the Better Business Bureau, and thousands of satisfied clients right now. They'll give you up to $10,000 of free silver on your first qualifying order. This offer, I'm sorry to tell you, is only for customers from the United States of America. Call 866-505-8315. That's 866-505-8315. Or simply text BRAND to 998899. Then they'll know we sent you. Get up to $5,000 in silver and protect your future in this crazy, crazy world with some solid precious metals, literally made in stars. Now let's get back to the content.
What has happened to Navalny is yet more proof of Putin's brutality. This tragedy reminds us of the stakes of this moment.
Reminds me of Julian Assange's case, to tell you the absolute truth. Now, the death of Navalny is obviously sad. That's a human being with a family who's been, it seems, unjustly imprisoned and perhaps even murdered, potentially by the tyrannical Vladimir Putin as part of his criminal invasion in Ukraine. All of these things can be true, but what also remains true is that the military-industrial complex and the establishment elite behave in a comparable way, which makes all of this sudden lachrymose affection for Alexei Navalny seem a little insincere and exploitative.
We have to provide the funding so Ukraine can keep defending itself.
Oh, right. Okay, I suppose, if only there was something we could do. Keep funding that war that's going so well. Yeah, because I suppose now Russia don't have nuclear weapons still, and NATO involvement, that's all wiped away, is it, with Navalny?
Against Putin's vicious onslaughts and war crimes.
Okay, vicious onslaughts and war crimes. So you've heard the establishment's perspective. Let's see if there's an alternative perspective available to us.